Good afternoon. So the book talks about there's 8 linguistic styles, and as a group we decided to look at all 8 and then decide the 5 that were most important with us, starting with sharing.
So sharing credit can happen a couple different ways, but a lot of the times it looks like I versus we. So maybe in a hiring process, a man would say, yeah, I hired this person because of these characteristics. But when a woman does the same thing, she might say, we decided to hire this person. And it kind of doesn't give her all the credit that she necessarily deserves. It can also look like when you're working in a group, somebody, the most boisterous or most talkative person, says all the ideas of the group, and not everybody else gets the credit that they deserve for it. And what this can kind of lead to is just kind of the people who don't get credit don't feel as good about themselves and don't have as much job satisfaction, which can really decrease work production and efficiency, and you won't get as much out of your employees' efficiency and kind of the value and hear all their ideas. So it's really important just to be aware and make sure that everybody's ideas are heard, so that you're utilizing every employee the best that you can, and you're getting all the best ideas, and everybody is working efficiently and effectively.
So the next style of top of the line to discuss was acting modest. So somebody who speaks or acts modestly doesn't typically take complete responsibility for their own achievements or ideas. They tend to downplay their own certainty. And people act this way in order to not seem too boastful or too arrogant, especially as a woman. And the result is that a lot of employers or people listening to their ideas are not as likely to have confidence in them, and their ideas get rejected.
Right, so asking the right questions is a key component to a good manager. However, how and when these questions are asked can send unintended signals about one's competence and power. People often assume that if someone is asking questions, then that person is less knowledgeable than them, which has a lot to do with gender, because men are socialized in a way that makes them more likely to be aware of the underlying power dynamic by which a question asker can be seen in a one-down position. Women, on the other hand, are less likely to be aware of this underlying power dynamic, so they're more likely to ask questions. And for the men that believe asking questions may reflect negatively on them, in turn, are more likely to form a negative opinion of others who ask questions in situations where they would not. And so I think this all comes down to the idea that we judge others by not only the way they speak, but how they are spoken to.
As far as apologizing goes, in the workplace, women tend to say I'm sorry more frequently than men. What they mean by this isn't so much that as an apology, it's more as saying I'm sorry that happened. It's become a ritualized way of expressing concern. Then another quote that I found from this section kind of applies just to this class in general. And it's, the world you live in is not the one everyone lives in. And that the way you assume is the way to talk is really only one of many.
So being indirect plays a huge role in the workplace and in our communication with others. Speaking indirectly is mostly used because we want to use less words. We don't want to have to explain something fully out, so sometimes bosses are indirect in giving tasks or what they expect out of you because they want to use less words. It obviously varies from culture to culture, so in the chapter, the example of the co-pilot and the pilot having a conversation, they said they were going to train the co-pilots on how to bring that up and communicate that to the pilot. But then a Japanese student brought it up that maybe we should also train the pilots on how to receive that information. That way the co-pilot doesn't feel so uncomfortable. So indirectness plays a huge role in the way that we speak to each other and how we then take it in. So women are indirect when telling others what to do because as children, we learned that you would be bossy or the mean girl if you told others what to do. So we learned not to do that. That way we wouldn't get called names on the playground. And then this brings up also the magazine example. The girl that worked for the magazine, she was the boss of all of her employees, and they had a good system going on. Their communication was great. Her boss came in and didn't like the way that she was communicating with her employees, so therefore it impacted her negatively just because of a different style of communication between boss and employees. Men are indirect because they, when they don't want to admit fault or weakness, so they come off in a different way than they probably should. And that's, again, because of what we learned as children, and boys push around the other boys in the one-down position. So if you are admitting to a weakness or a fault that you do have, then you're going to be pushed around by other men.
Wrapping it up, I just think language is a very useful tool for us. We're still learning it, and we just all need to somehow choose our words carefully and overall, and just try to work it all out.
So, same question. What would be the one piece of advice that you would give a young woman who's just going into her first job?
I would say like what the teal team said, just like be bold, be confident, like try to go out there as much as you can, like as the interview, like try to like, compete the same.
And with saying that, we have to go, as women, we have to approach situations in a different way that men would. So I would say we have to learn who we're dealing with and how to approach the situation and what style we're going to use. And we have to try to kind of master all of them, because the situations that do arise as women, we're maybe not as confident as men would be in all situations. So we have to learn different styles and be able to attack anything that comes towards us with that style.
Or maybe kind of change the rules up. If you're going into a meeting, before the meeting, talk to one of your coworkers or one of your friends and say, after you say this, can I say this? So then that way you're not fighting for it like a man, because I think in the chapter it said women don't always like to fight for that position of credit, because it makes them feel less confident about their work, and it's not as enjoyable for them. So you can go around it and talk to friends, or even talk to the manager and say, hey, can we do our meeting like this so that I can explain my ideas in a way that makes me feel comfortable.
Anybody want to add to that? Or so then the other question, what would your one thing be to say to a young gentleman who's entering into the workforce? What was your...
I feel like it's important for men to know that these barriers are there. Just them having the information, knowing that like conversation between men and women often is different, and if they tackle it with that mentality to it, I feel like it'll make for a smoother work environment.
Again, it comes down to learning the styles even for men and how to talk to women even if that is the case. And I don't think that we necessarily have to put it as women and men trying to speak with each other, because I think we do a pretty good job, but there's different styles depending on each man as well. So even if you are a man going into, a job with a man as a boss, there's going to be a different style than maybe you have. So again, we're just learning all of the styles that you can in order to project the best way that you can for yourself.
And then, even just realizing as a man, if not everybody gets to talk and share their ideas, then you're not hearing all maybe the best ideas, which could make your work harder. So just make sure everybody has a voice and can share their ideas so that it makes it easier for you and more efficient.
Anything to add to that? Great.